Hey guys, Zane from the Infinite Jukebox here with another album review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Little Simz record, No Thank You. No Thank You is the latest studio album from British rapper and poet Little Simz, one of the most intensely important artists to focus on in the music industry at the moment, if I'm being totally honest. She's one of the dominant female MCs out there at the moment. She went from being one of the most promising musicians in the music industry to winning the Mercury Prize last year with her last studio album, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, a major highlight for music in general over the course of the past couple of years. And overall, she's gone from an underground darling to one of the most critically beloved artists on the planet at the moment, with about as much mainstream success as any quote-unquote alternative act can possibly get. And now here she is following up a fantastic release with the aforementioned Sometimes I Might Be Introvert with her latest studio album, No Thank You. No Thank You is an interesting record in the context of where Little Simz is at currently as an artist, as it's a bit more of a return to her roots artistically, as it really removes a lot of the semi-orchestral and heavily flush, big, massive instrumentation that was found on her last studio album, and exchanges it for more of a stripped-back, raw kind of sound, which is more reminiscent of her earlier years where she was still a majorly underground artist. And overall, I can't really say that's going to appeal to everybody. If you were introduced to Little Simz via Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, you may be missing that sort of, again, very grand sound that was on that record, but if you really do know what you're walking into here on No Thank You, then I can guarantee you that this record is extremely successful in a sonic regard, as it feels small but punchy and impactful. Little Simz herself here is, of course, a great rapper and MC. Overall, she has an insane amount of bite in her voice and her delivery style that isn't exactly the most overly aggressive thing ever, but isn't the most subtle either, really meeting this nice middle ground of performance and performance style that I think works beautifully for her overall. She feels subdued, yet at the same time she's willing to attack when necessary as well, and it just makes her an extremely engaging performer overall. And if No Thank You is proof of anything regarding the career that Little Simz has led thus far and where she is now in the music industry, where she stands in the hearts of a lot of music geeks and nerds and fans such as myself, it's why she's so deserving of really being one of the dominant female MCs on the planet at the moment. She is truly a striking performer, and she's proven that with these grand, lush instrumentations on previous records, namely Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, the album that, again, really broke her through to a wider audience, and now she's proving it to that same audience once again on No Thank You, just in a much more stripped back kind of fashion that feels just as suited for her as what initially introduced her to many different people such as myself. Obviously, though, Sometimes I Might Be Introvert was not the only thing that Little Simz ever did before No Thank You came out. She had an entire career that was led before this. She had released several projects over the years that, again, were mainly underground, and that's where the interesting thing comes in here. It's not just a return to an older sound for Little Simz that we find on No Thank You, rather it's just a return to her roots in general, and that also is applicable to the lyrical department as well. Again, as always, the lyrical content is just really fantastic here, as she really hones in on this more introspective nature, which is something that she has focused on for a lot of her work in the past, but nonetheless, it still feels like she's adding a new and fresh take on it as she reflects on artistic struggles, personal struggles, and the series of events that have led up to the current place in her life that she is at now, and ultimately, it just feels like an extremely reflective album that is just in awe of everything that has occurred in her career thus far, and even those moments of braggadocio that do appear throughout Little Simz's lyricism, which is arguably inevitable, seeing as it's kind of hard to not be the least humble person in the world or anything like that. I do kind of feel like it's subtle nonetheless, and she really does feel humble throughout everything overall. While there are definitely some artists that I want to be the opposite of humble because it suits their nature more, this really does work for Little Simz for the better overall, I would say, as it suits the more dialed-back nature of No Thank You as a record, it suits the more dialed-back thematics that are going on throughout this album, and overall it works out for this very reflective project overall. Considering her last studio album was this very grand, bombastic statement, it only feels like this is the natural next step in Little Simz's career, dialing it back a little bit, taking a few steps back into her past work to really just look at everything that has gone on in her life while still ensuring everyone listening that she is still one of the best MCs out there at the moment, while she's just as in awe with the world as she is her career and her music that she's putting out at the moment. Whether this record is being lighthearted or it's being deathly serious, it is straight to the point, it's direct, and it's striking constantly in the lyrical content, and Little Simz having a fantastic flow, and again, amazing delivery style and massive amounts of charisma overall certainly does help the lyrical content here, but nonetheless, I feel like even if you were to just dissect the songs lyric by lyric without any possible backing music or anything like that, you'd still have a very strong collection of poetry. So overall, No Thank You kind of came out of nowhere with not a major lead up or anything like that, no huge announcement that really got a lot of people hyped for months on end or anything, and maybe that was for the better actually. I mean, a few months worth of hype may have actually killed the real amount of traction that this record ultimately ends up getting, and honestly, I feel like waiting around for an album like this for months on end would kind of be disappointing in a way, as it's ultimately the dialing back of a lot of different qualities about Little Simz, but the thing with that is that it doesn't necessarily mean her work is weaker here or anything like that. It just means that she's taking a different approach to the style that people that have only heard Sometimes I Might Be Introvert will not be the most familiar with in the world, but anyone familiar with her earlier works will definitely know. I'm going to give this record 4 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that's the end of this album review. I've been Zane from the Infinite Jukebox. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.